Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Hack Dude. Hack Dude.
Radio.
Hack Dude. Hack Dude.
Radio.
Sack.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
Into the silo.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen. And welcome to another episode of the Sackheads Radio Show on the SHR Media Network. I'm your host, Sackhead Clint. Sitting across from me, the one, the only, the beautiful, the hairy, although not quite as hairy as Sacco, the Bostonian madman himself. It's like a WWE announcement almost.
Right.
Sean, the Madman Sackhead. Almost like a lucha libre kind of a thing.
It's actually more
going on.
Amazingly,
right?
it's more like that than anything else.
Than anything else, right?
I do have the Patriots mask here somewhere that I used to wear occasionally.
No, I know. I was actually looking for it as I was doing it. It was almost like a Mexican soccer announcer / lucha libre / sumo wrestling kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean sumo wrestling like in any kind of derogatory way.
No, I'm not Japanese, so I'm okay.
Right. Nor are you really built like one.
What? Now you're just being nice.
That's where that's kind of where I was going with that.
Now you're just being pleasant, and I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Thank you. How was your week?
Overall, okay.
Okay.
Still,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. So I was in Seattle, and let me tell you about my Seattle experience.
Okay.
Seattle, it's a beautiful city. First of all.
All right.
Seattle is a beautiful city. I was expecting, San Francisco kind of big city meets filth, because that's what a lot of American big cities has turned into. But it was actually very, very clean.
Wow.
Seattle, it was surprisingly clean. The streets didn't smell like urine.
Well, I guess after all the protests, they finally got people in there to clean up for minimum wage.
I guess. Yeah, well, that's like $30 an hour there.
I think it's 47 actually.
Okay. I was off by a few dollars, but it was a pretty nice city, and even like the folks who they come up and in California, you can have some very aggressive panhandlers.
Mm-hmm.
In San Francisco, you can have some ridiculously aggressive panhandlers where they will get in your way, get physical with you, and there's nothing that anybody really does about it because they're the poor homeless people. But in Seattle, it's like you look at them sideways, and they run the opposite direction.
Right.
It's weird. But in Seattle, home to Starbucks, and I had the opportunity to go to the first Starbucks actually in Pike's Place,
which is kind of cool.
It was kind of cool. Which is where the coffee Pike's Place got its name. The standard coffee they serve, all the time. It's not
right.
the blonde roast. Right? I didn't know that before, so that was actually a pretty cool experience. They had this roastery and tasting room, which was ridiculous. I showed you pictures of it. It was it looked like a 5-star restaurant. Did it not?
Yeah, it absolutely did.
It was beautiful inside, and the menu.
I was very impressed with it.
Yeah, the menu is completely different. You can actually go. They do like coffee tastings. They do coffee pairings.
I don't want to. This is too good not to share. I'm sorry. Agador in the chat room said, "Senor Sean, es el patriote grande."
Wow,
I like that. That would be my wrestling name.
The Big Patriot.
The Big Patriot.
Lisi said grande and not gordo.
I'm screenshotting that.
You should.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just felt that was necessary.
That was not necessary. That could have waited for Sean's share time. But let me tell you something about Seattle. I have never seen more man buns, top knots, and skinny jeans in my life. Another observation. So basically what I just said is there are no real men in Seattle.
At all.
Or very few.
Right.
There were very few. And I saw something else ridiculous in Seattle.
What?
You're not going to believe this.
What's that?
It reminded me of Ghostbusters. I thought the world was about to end. Cats and dogs living together. Remember that whole thing?
Mass hysteria.
Inside one of the Starbucks.
Yes.
I saw Seattle firemen and Seattle police officers at the same table drinking coffee, laughing and smoking and joking.
Really?
Yes.
They were just talking like normal people?
Cats and dogs living together.
Absolutely horrible.
I literally thought the apocalypse was near.
That is, you know what? This is what happens when groups integrate.
Clearly, Seattle does not believe in segregation anymore.
Right. I'm not okay with this.
Right. So just an observation. Another observation. I decided to test a theory.
Okay.
So Seattle.
Oh, this couldn't have gone well.
Seattle is home to the Mariners, right?
Yes.
American League baseball team. They're in the AL West.
Yes.
I am an Oakland Athletics fan.
Yes.
AL West. I wore my Oakland Athletics sweatshirt.
Right, and as you should have.
As I should have. And, I got no sideways glances.
Cowards.
Everybody was very nice. It's baseball, right? It's
Cowards.
baseball. I didn't have my Niner sweatshirt.
Right.
But I did let it slip that I was a 49er fan. And I got friendly ribbing. Oakland A's, no ribbing whatsoever.
Are you 50 or older? This news is for you. The CDC now recommends you get vaccinated against pneumococcal pneumonia. Even if you're healthy, your age puts you at risk. People 50 or older are over 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with pneumococcal pneumonia compared to adults 18 to 49. Just one shot can help protect you. Learn more and schedule at vaxassist.com. That's VAXassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Business taxes. We're stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service.
I was guessing slap fight.
No. Friendly ribbing. 49ers big slap fight. No. It was a pig Latin argument is what it was. But I rolled into a Starbucks and I did another social experiment. I took a sip of my coffee and I might have said to my brother, "Wow, Dunkin' Donuts is actually better than this." You could have sworn that was it. I mean, that's like standing in Putin's in Putin's presence and saying communism sucks. I mean, it was ridiculous. I thought I was going to be killed.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
I haven't run that far and that fast in. What year is this? I mean, it was and the cops were some of the ones that were chasing me.
Right. They were like, "Get back here,
I'm pretty
Susie."
sure I committed a class 3 felony.
I believe in the state of Seattle, there's something to that effect, yes.
In the city of Seattle or in the state of Seattle?
State.
They're their own
I was
going
to say, it's the People's Republic of Seattle.
Right, it's a state of being, Seattle. But it was beautiful.
All politics aside, I've never been to Seattle. It's one of the places on my list that I really want to go.
So you and I need to go to a baseball game.
I would absolutely have to.
Because
absolutely.
It was so easy. Like I took light rail.
Yeah.
I took light rail.
That says a lot.
Yeah. Like from the airport, there's a line, so even Portuguese people like me can't get lost. I mean, I took a picture of the map. It's Light Link, and it's a straight line, and it literally runs back and forth with the airport at one end and like downtown Seattle at the other.
But how many times did you actually have to ask the guy?
Yeah, right.
Hey, I just want to make sure is this the right train to go down?
Right.
You know how I could go up or down, even though there's not a lot of up left.
Right.
I just want to.
I want to make sure I can still go. But it runs right by the baseball stadium and football stadium, which are right next to each other. The weird thing flying into that airport, like the runway is like it's elevated.
Right. I've heard of that.
So it was a little odd.
Yeah. SeaTac is a very strange airport. From what I have read and seen.
No, it is. From what I did.
Okay, good. So overall, Seattle was pretty good.
Overall, Seattle was good. Look, and public transportation was ridiculously easy.
You know what? It's funny how that can actually happen in some cities.
Yeah.
Whereas in Sacramento, it's horrific.
Right.
And it's almost the exact same system. That's the funniest part. Sacramento was designed on the Seattle and Oregon platform, if you will.
But we failed. Because it sucks.
It blows. And I was just saying when I was down in Texas with Dan.
Hang on a sec. When Sean said that blows, that was in no way related to any kind of violence or any type of violent incident that
involving mass transit.
Or to deal with mass transit.
Stinks is what I meant.
Right.
Literally, Sacramento light rail smells horribly.
Literally.
But when I was down in Texas, it's the same light rail system, and I thought it was great. I actually sent you a message while I was on it.
Yes, you did. I think you snuggled up with somebody while you were on.
I was trying to.
Yeah.
I was trying to. Well, listen, I was in a strange place for me. I was far away from home, and, people talked really funny. They made me buy cowboy boots. It was really like an out-of-body experience for me. And obviously had a wonderful time doing it. So, good times. But you went for a really good cause.
I did. Sackhead Michaela graduated. College.
Yeah, a brilliant young lady who will do nothing but bring good to this world, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I think the world of her. Well,
you're not going to think the world of her when I tell you something.
Okay.
College changed her.
Oh, crap. We warned her about this. She wrote about this.
She did write about this. And it still changed her a little bit. But she was indoctrinated a little bit, to a point. She's still more libertarian than she is communist, so that's good.
Wow.
But she recognizes it.
She went full hippie up there.
No, she didn't go full hippie. She still believes guns don't kill people. The manufacturers do.
In that situation, I always...
I'm kidding, by the way.
I always blame the parents.
I'm kidding. She's still very much pro-gun stuff, but it's a little interesting to see the shift. And having a little conversation with her, it's like, oh, wait a second, nobody's brought that point of view up in the last 4 years.
Stockholm Syndrome.
Basically, yeah.
Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
Absolutely is.
Yeah.
I say this.
College Syndrome.
Yeah, it's Stockholm Syndrome, though. Eventually, if you're surrounded by the same opinion enough for an extended period of time, it's like Chinese water torture. You're eventually going to break. It gets dripped onto your head. And
like liberalism.
And if you don't have that ability...
Like the public school system.
Starting at age 0.
Like the college system.
Right. And if you don't have that ability to have somebody come in and kind of block the water from a little bit, you're going to lose it. And, thank goodness for our listeners and our friends and the ones that we run in circles with, because if you follow social media and, like you said, schools and everything else, all of us would be going that route if there wasn't some great people to kind of keep us,
and some great,
all of us.
and some great media networks and some fantastic shows.
And great partners on those networks, absolutely.
Yep.
Specifically SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Radio, specifically.
Specificity.
Intentionally mentioning partners for shameless self-promotion, yes.
Right. For example,
the Unpleasant Black Guy.
High Plains Pundit.
High Plains Pundit Radio.
Right. Sackheads Radio.
Sackheads Radio would be another good one. News and Commentary with Dan Butcher. High Plains Talk Radio. We've said that already.
We've said that. Well, they partnered with us a couple times. The Exceptional Conservative.
Yeah.
The Exceptional Conservative.
Underground Professor.
Although I do want to say that I do notice that you were hesitant mentioning his show, and I'm thinking that maybe it's because he's black, because you are in fact the blatant bigot. I just want to point that out for our listeners who may not know.
For the record, though, I did mention the professor last. And there's some
because you're discriminating based on
against
age.
the elderly,
right?
Against the elderly, right? It never ends with me.
It doesn't. It's ridiculous. This is my point. This is my point, Sean.
I'm so glad we can laugh.
Well, we need to laugh, especially in this time.
Yeah.
But horrible tragedy this week.
Yeah, we got to change gears and. Before we go any further, I want to call and ask our listeners and our friends for a moment of silence for the victims of the horrific attack in Orlando. And just for a moment, just with us, if you could bow your head in a moment of silence to remember those that we lost in Orlando. Thank you.
I've been watching a lot of the pundits and a lot of the political fallout from this incident, and my initial thought with this, and you and I talked about this. My initial thought on this was. This was not an attack against the gay community. It was, but this was not exclusively a hate crime against the gay community. This was not specifically an attack against a particular religion or about a particular racial or ethnic group. This was an attack against fellow Americans.
Absolutely.
And I don't view the attack because it happened at a gay club as, this is a problem that the gay community, the homosexual community has to deal with. This is an American problem. This is an attack against our fellow Americans. And I even asked if we talked that night, and the very next day, as soon as the news broke.
Right.
We talked, and I said, "Hey, do you remember when we stood in solidarity with Charlie Hebdo?" And we said, "Hey, I am Charlie Hebdo." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "You know what? We absolutely need to do the same thing here."
Absolutely. Why aren't we?
We are now.
We are
right,
but why are more people not?
So we stand in solidarity with the victims, their families, the gay community, the straight community, all ethnic groups right now. We are the pulse.
All of us are.
All of us are. Here
in one way or another.
Sackhead Sean, Sackhead Clint, here at SHR Media, Sackhead's Radio Show. We are the pulse. We stand with you. We stand as one group of Americans. It doesn't matter what flag you fly.
Right.
We're all under the American flag.
Well, and it's one of those things. When you look at the LGBT flag, the rainbow flag that we all see all the time, I equate it almost like on the battlefield. dating back for thousands of years.
Right.
You've always had individual flags for individual units.
Yeah.
Back in the day, all the way back to in Ireland, Scotland, and England, each family had its crest on its shield, and that's how you identified friend to foe.
Yep.
And obviously now you have on the battlefield, for hundreds of years in American history, every unit had their special flag or their patch or identifier.
Yep.
To show what they did for the military or for the country, what their specific job was,
what unit they were with,
but also as a symbol of pride of who they were.
Yes.
You see it on the tails of jet fighters,
for squadrons,
all over the place. It's a very regular thing. When I look at flags in this country for different groups, I view that flag, in this case the rainbow flag, as that unit's flag.
Their battle flag, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They absolutely have a different battle than we all do. And I applaud them for constantly, whether I agree with everything or don't agree with everything, they're still together and they unify really well under that flag. It's actually something to be pretty impressed with. But I also look at that as a flag that stands under the American flag.
Right.
You have your state flag, you have all the other ones underneath it. And I ask that they never be afraid or even they should always know that the umbrella of the American flag is one that we can all stand underneath.
Absolutely.
And I put a Facebook post out the other night, and I 100% agree with this, and I think a lot of conservatives would agree with, that I will always stand with you as an American, even if I don't agree with you 100%.
Yes.
If I were in that club, just like I think all of our listeners and anyone else, if I had my weapon or not, I would have engaged the shooter. I would have died trying if I had to, for my fellow citizens, because that's who we are. And I think that's something that we lose in this country a lot. We lose that unwritten rule that you're supposed to always try to protect each other. And much what happened with this flag, which we'll get into, this incident, which we'll get into in a little bit, this country never took time, in my opinion, to stand with those folks pretty quick for an extended period of time. We did get right into the rhetoric on both sides.
We did. I want to stay on flags for a second, though, because I had an observation today.
Okay.
Talking about flags, at the California State Capitol, there was flying a rainbow flag from one of the balconies on the building, and I don't know if you recall when the Supreme Court decision came down and on same-sex marriage, and California voters overwhelmingly rejected same-sex marriage. It went through the court system and it was upheld, and there was debates on both sides. But from the California State Capitol building, on all four sides, the legislatures flew the rainbow flag. That, to me, was inappropriate. Not because of the flag itself, but because the legislatures, the Joint Rules Committee, whoever was responsible for that, was flying the flag almost in the face of the California voters, the same people that sent them there. And whether you agree or disagree with that legislation wasn't the point. The point was the vast majority of California voters rejected that proposition, and the first chance the legislatures had in that state to fly that flag in everybody's face, they kind of really put it out there and flew it in everybody's face. And it was more of a slap in the face of those that voted against that for whatever reason, whether it was religious reasons or whatever reason, or whether they said, well, that marriage should be a religious thing only, and if some church recognizes same-sex, great. If not, then fine. But whatever their argument was, it was almost like a big slap in the face, a big middle finger to the California voters, or at least to a segment of them, a large segment of them that voted against it. And you and I have said on this show, we don't care what people do in their private lives. Mm-hmm. That's your business, not ours. But there was a rainbow flag flying today, and you know what? I didn't that was a different situation. I did not view that as I'm putting this in the face or trying to rub something in or making a political statement. I honestly thought that, you know what, that flag is there to show solidarity with the community that unites under that flag that suffered a horrible loss at the hands of a terrorist.
Right.
And I 100% agree with that, and I support that. I support that flag flying there in that situation. But the sad thing was, I had to wonder if this was a large Christian church that had this incident happen. Would those same people that flew the flag, the rainbow flag from the California state capitol, fly the Christian flag from that same balcony at the state capitol? Or if it were a group of the sons and daughters of the Confederacy, would that same group of individuals fly the battle flag of Lee from that balcony?
If it was a Jewish synagogue that got attacked, would they fly the Star of David?
Right, so that was kind of the cynic in me coming out, and I recognize that. But it's a valid question.
It is.
It's a valid question, but I don't want to take away from what they did by showing solidarity with that community in flying that flag at the Capitol, because I agree with that. I agree with that sentiment, and my only point in bringing that up is I would agree with that sentiment whatever flag they flew from that balcony. Honestly, and I might get some hate right now coming through on the chat room, but if a terrorist a group attacked a mosque here in the United States and they wanted to fly the crescent moon or whatever, and it was an act of terror because the ISIS folks don't believe it, whatever it is, I wouldn't necessarily begrudge them that either, as long as it's done for that reason, but not to exclude certain groups or, well, we're going to fly this flag because they were targeted and we treat this particular group with kids' gloves or whatever it is.
No, I agree, and I understand what you're saying. And one of the things that I want to do is I have a couple feel-good stories, not feel-good, but a couple of good in the tragedy stories that have come out of this so far. And one of them that the underground professor linked to me, and I did see it earlier, is Mark Cuban, the owner of the San Antonio Spurs. Is it the Spurs or the Dallas Mavericks? Which one's he own? I know he's a basketball owner.
I don't follow basketball.
Yeah, I don't either, and that's how horrible it is. And when I did it, I knew who Mark Cuban was. I forget what team it was. I want to say it was the Mavericks. Signed a check to cover the overtime, and I want to say it was $120,000 for extra protection in Dallas's gay community for the police department, picking up the overtime bill. And to me, I think that's pretty awesome because no matter what, and I think Mark's a conservative guy. I don't know him that well. It is the Mavericks. Thank you, guys. But for a private citizen to step up and kind of put his money where his mouth is, I think that's pretty awesome. And the other thing, too, is Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A
must have been horrible because they hate them. They hate the LGBT group. With a passion. If
you came in with your receipt from donating blood the couple days afterwards, your meal was for free. They also showed up at the incident for all the first responders and fed them continuously.
And I brought
for $0 for the goose egg.
And I made that smart aleck comment because do you know how much guff? That's right, I said guff. Chick-fil-A has taken over the last couple years by the left. Oh, they're just this hate group. They're hate mongering. They hate the LGBT community. They don't. They're a very charitable organization. They might disagree morally based upon their view. They might disagree politically, but no, they're a very charitable group. That's what they do. Guess what? That's what happens. That's what people on the right typically do when tragedy strikes. We don't care what your cause is. unless it's terrorism. We don't care.
Social cause.
Yeah, we don't care what your social cause is. We're all Americans and
you shouldn't
together.
be victimized,
and
no
so,
matter what.
Right. And so for Chick-fil-A to come out and do that and support the LGBT community, really, as Americans, and good on them, And I want to know if there's any leftists out there, and you might be able to find it, that have actually given Chick-fil-A kudos for doing that.
I'm sure there's some Twitter people and stuff like that.
Like a couple.
Yeah.
That should be all over the place.
What's funny is, through all of this, and I know I only have a couple seconds left here in the segment, one of the things I've seen on Twitter is for all the anti-conservative gun people, et cetera, you're also seeing a lot of thank you from individuals in the gay community, specifically citing certain conservatives. I saw a bunch of people thank Chick-fil-A that were obviously part of the gay community based on their profiles and stuff like that. So you may not get the mass media doing it, stuff like that, but the fact that the individuals that were in that community that were affected recognized it and appreciate it, to me that's actually more important.
Absolutely.
And I think it takes a lot. So we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk about briefly, we don't have to go back into it too much, but the incident itself, and then eventually get into the politics that was bestowed upon all of this, right here on the Sackheads Radio Show, live on the SHR Media Network.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
Sack.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
And
in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show, live in the SHR Media Network. Thank you so much for joining us. Always helps when you hit the mute button.
Why'd you do that?
Well, I'm not an engineer by trade. I thought we've all kind of figured that out by now.
Where is Sacco?
Where the hell is Sacco when you need him? So obviously,
should we take a call right now? I'm getting called on my cell phone.
No, we're not taking a call right now. We're not taking a call right now.
Okay.
We have way too much to do.
Hang on, I'm taking a call. Okay, I'm not taking a call.
Thank you. So, obviously, the night of the incident, at 2:02 a.m., the terrorist arrives at the Pulse nightclub. He's armed with a 6-hour MCX and a Glock 17 9mm pistol. There's a police officer at the door. Suspect immediately engages the officer, ambush style. The officer never had a chance to kind of set himself or knew what was coming. It sounds from the reports that the officer did what he was supposed to do, which is take cover and attempt to return fire. The suspect makes it inside. The facts have yet to come out as to what happened if that, so I'm not going to speculate. I'll give you what I have. 2:06, people inside the club start texting and calling loved ones, ask them to call the police. Obviously, shots fired call came from the officer. The response came. They declared a mass casualty incident fairly early. 2:22 a.m., the terrorist suspect calls 911 and pledges allegiance to ISIS. He also calls a news station, a friend, and there was somebody else in the mix, too, that they haven't released yet. Apparently, his phone did sustain some damage inside during the assault to try to eliminate him.
16 calls, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot more that'll come out on that, hopefully. It needs to come out. 5 a.m., let me back up just a little bit. Sometime after 2:22, it turns into a barricaded hostage situation. Police aren't able to make entry for one reason or another. It turns into a SWAT call-out. I think they tried negotiating at first, hoping that he would release some of the hostages. 5 a.m., the decision was made for SWAT to make entry. They make a dynamic entry with shape charges going through entry charges going through the wall. Multiple entrances, but that was shows you the complexity of the incident. The fact that they blew through cinder blocks in order to make an entry to try to rescue those people.
So I think they had an explosive breach.
Yeah,
and they used the armored vehicle also.
Yes,
to make entry.
Yes.
So I want to. If I don't mean to interrupt you for a second.
No, please.
But I think that's an important point to discuss from a tactical standpoint. They used an armored vehicle in order to breach that location because they couldn't get in through standard breaching techniques.
Right.
I'm guessing, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe the doors were reinforced or something of that nature. Again, I don't know. Or maybe there was something in front of the door that prohibited them from being able to breach that. They didn't want to go through. I don't know. But I want to call your attention to, and I didn't have time to pull the old show up or the old shows up this week. Do you remember when the Obama administration ended the program and wanted to pull armored vehicles?
Yes.
And I made the argument on this show that law enforcement officers are going to be the first ones to respond to a terror incident. I'm pretty sure I wrote an article about this and we put it up also.
Right.
And you and I have talked about this ad nauseum.
Nonstop.
That armor is defensive in nature, and when it came time to responding to a terror incident, it was going to be the men and women in civilian law enforcement, not the United States military, and that armor is going to be a major component of that.
Yes.
They are going to need that capability to be able to respond to a terror-style attack. And that's exactly what happened in this case.
Well, and you also saw it in Boston.
In Boston during the apprehension phase.
Right? With Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Massachusetts State Police, as well as the Boston Police Department, both utilized. One was a Bearcat, and the other one was a
yes.
I forget the name of it, but
so it was probably either an Oshkosh or an MRAP.
It wasn't. No, it was one of the older style armored car
Peacekeeper.
styles. Yeah, the Peacekeepers.
Okay.
That was it.
So Obama just pulled. The Obama administration just pulled how many armored vehicles and surplus
gosh.
vehicles that smaller agencies would not be able to
afford on their own
at all.
Right.
They just pulled and crippled the capability of American law enforcement. Fortunately, Orlando, this was a larger city.
That's what I was just going to say.
They had the Bearcat.
Right.
Which I think what they responded with, the Lenco Bearcat.
And one of the other things, too, that Orlando had the advantage of is they're the first responders for something at Disney, which has always been a concern. We'll get into the Disney connection later. So their tactical teams are very well versed in operations and planning. And a lot of big cities are, but I think they get a lot of money from Disney to be prepared to protect people and have an excessive amount of training, which is just amazing. And it was very fortunate. Like I said, a lot of people wondered why they waited till so long, and the answer was quite simple. If you think the hostages are alive and you can negotiate, that's the approach that is most commonly used.
And I don't know.
I can't speak to that specifically in this case.
And I don't know if they're referring to after that gunfire subsided or at the initial point when the gunfire is going off.
Right. And I've heard questions for both. And my response has been, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
However,
that will come out.
That will come out. But the people on scene, I have a feeling, made the decision that they had to make in order to remain effective for the eventual rescue. And you know, I don't want to sit here and second guess these heroes who are running into this situation, unless I'm giving a specific reason to later on, like we saw in San Jose, where I have no problem questioning why certain things were done.
Right.
But it was after the information came out. It hasn't come out yet, so I don't want to start jumping on the conclusion.
Exactly. Absolutely right. My only point with that was hey, we were right.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anybody talking about the armor component of
Absolutely
this.
Not. Absolutely not.
On the right or left. Not that I want to politicize that. But
no,
you know what?
You know what? For all the other stuff that's getting politicized out of this is a positive that could come out.
Yeah, this is an important reason, an important issue to recognize.
Right. And
with those that are saying it's the militarization of our police force.
No, it's a response to the ever-changing threat.
Yes, this is. Look, if you're a citizen and you can afford one, have at it. This is something that law enforcement needs in order to respond and save lives, unless you want the military tasked with that responsibility.
Right. And we've talked about this a lot. And I've had a response to that recently where I've said, you know what? You can argue that it's the militarization of the local police. That's fine. You know why? Because the threat is a militarized threat now.
It is. Absolutely.
So it's changed. A couple responses from the chat room. I'm having a problem with my end of chat. I can read, I can't enter, so I'm going to try to fix that. But the person at the front door, somebody said Clubs may have had his own armed security. It was not. Orlando PD did certify that it was an off-duty officer that was working overtime. And Agador said, you know, if you knew it was a Muslim, you can't negotiate, you should go full-on kinetic. Well, in the haze of battle, you can't confirm one way or the other, and you go to the standard protocol.
And another,
and I understand there's a lot of people who are emotionally aggravated right now, and I get that. I wanted this guy to die quickly and save as many lives as possible, but you have to understand that they have a set of protocol for a reason. And that needs to be followed.
It does. And look, you can't. Here's the other issue. Particularly if they knew that this guy was Muslim and he called 911 and pledged allegiance to ISIS, you can't just unless there's not active shooting going on. I would not expect that team to go in and handle that, because if you know they've pledged allegiance to ISIS, you have to assume if hostages are there, you have to wonder about the possibility of booby traps.
Right.
You have to wonder about the possibility
there's
of additional threats.
But even before you get there,
so much to worry about. So that argument of, well, you know he's Muslim, you got to go. Well, not necessarily. That has to really depend on the situation, I think.
Right. I understand the fact that you're arguing from the point of view, Ag, that they won't negotiate. But the problem is you have to confirm, because look at what happens if it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Let's say some idiot called 911 saying he was the shooter, and it wasn't. And the guy in there was an angry coworker that, like we saw in Texas a couple days ago, or whatever. You have to make sure you have to go off of tangible intelligence, something you can prove or disprove in this sort of a thing. You can't go on emotion, because if you make entry and you're wrong, and everybody dies because you made entry, the opposite argument we're going to be having right now is, why didn't he wait? His call for 911, he calls from a cell phone. You're not going to get the same information as he would be if he called from the landline where the address shows up. The way the 911 system works is it goes to the nearest satellite or a tower, and then it routes usually to the state level where it gets transferred down to the city. You also have to understand those dispatchers are also trying to manage on their end this situation that's going on. You have a mass casualty incident, hundreds of victims. They're trying to utilize resources from all over the region. You have to be intelligent about what you do. Sadly, it's one of those things that you have to go back to what's trained, and you have to go back to the protocols you have in place. Now, if we want to sit and look at them afterwards and say, what could we have done better, they're already doing that, I guarantee you.
Which they should be doing.
Absolutely, after action.
We can't do that right now.
Right, that's not our place to do.
Not right now. Not while the facts were out. And
none of us here were on the ground there.
Right.
So we don't know what intelligence was appropriately relayed or not. We don't know if they had the confirmation or not. Like I said, we have the age of swatting where people will call 911 under a masked information to get SWAT to make a dynamic entry into somebody's house that's not theirs. So you need to go with the protocols, and that's just the way it works. That is just the way they do things, and they're the professionals. They have to do it for a reason. I know emotionally,
and a lot of it
angry.
Is liability.
It does come down.
As horrible as that is
to say,
it does come
down as liability.
A lot of it is liability, because
right.
Guess what? If those guys go in, if those guys go in, even though this guy was a terrorist and he was claiming responsibility for ISIS, if they just went in and smoked him,
right,
that family would be suing. It'd be people.
Well, and even at that, I mean, like I said,
am I wrong?
Right, but all liability aside.
But it still is a component of the decision-making
No,
process.
I understand that, but the fact of the matter is your operational planning is done ahead of time for incidents like this, and you have your playbook.
It is, but that playbook oftentimes is done with liability being weighed heavily for why those tactics and those decisions are made, and certain situations are set up that way.
And like I said, we weren't on the ground there, so we can all sit here and talk in circles about what should have been done. I'm not second-guessing law enforcement until I'm given a reason to.
I'm not either.
No, I know you're not.
Yeah.
I'm just declaring that. I mean, if I was on the ground there and involved and I saw something I didn't like, that would be different. But when you get to the point of making a dynamic entry where you're blowing through walls, concrete walls, it tells you what a situation that is. So either way, 5:05 a.m., through one of the breaching charge holes in the cinder block walls, the shooter apparently emerges. It appears it's still weapon in hand, and he was then put down, neutralized by numerous officers. The initial threat at that point on the scene was declared safe about 6:30 a.m. They started to go in and do the unfortunate work of recovery of victims. Since that incident, we know so much has come out. We know this guy has had a history of saying radicalized things. Obviously, we identify who he is first. Then we know he said radicalized things before. Under investigation on the FBI 2 separate times. The second time is because his name came up while discussing a suicide bomber who killed himself overseas. Both times he was investigated and spoken to by the FBI. At the time he worked for G4S Security, which used to be Wackenhut in this country, and it was bought out by a British company called G4S. He's had numerous assignments, one of them being a courthouse, BP oil still, whatever. He was an armed security guard with them. He held all state licenses, appropriately so far. Which, by the way, I talked about this the other day. that doesn't mean that gave him the tactical training to be able to pull this off. Having worked in that field for a long time, I know these big companies and their training, and I can tell you right now it's as minimal as possible, and it's all about not shooting their weapon, not how to. Neither here nor there. As we go back into his history, it's a very, very convoluted history, but the same thing keeps popping up. From his time in high school, he celebrated 9/11. Has always had a very, very, very anti-American kind of approach in life, which was pretty well known. He made numerous offensive statements to black individuals, gay individuals, women. While working for G4S, a former Port St. Lucie police officer who was working with him filed a complaint with G4S about his statements. Those statements were found to be, for whatever reason, they did nothing. He remained employed.
Well, because if they would have done something back then, it would have been because they were racist.
Right.
Right?
Sadly, that's exactly it. G4S
I'm not being
was
sarcastic.
No, G4S was also aware of the federal investigation into him because the federal authorities contacted G4S and had meetings with them about him and his assignments. And then, as time progressed, he was married once, got a divorce a couple months later. His first wife described him as completely abusive and a monster. He remarried his current wife, who is a piece of work in herself. They have a 3-year-old child. And go on from there.
He did an interview. There was an interview with him while he was at one of the oil spill web sites.
Yeah, so he's popped up in a lot of strange places.
Yeah, and where he was talking about, they want more oil to spill because it's all about the money. Did you see this interview with him?
Yes, and it was very strange. He's also was a guest on his father's show a couple times. For a guy who allegedly raised flags, but not enough to be investigated further, he did a lot. And it sounds like, to me, as a commentator right now, is a lot of people like we saw in San Bernardino, like you saw in Chattanooga. A lot of people knew something was coming.
Like you saw in Fort Hood #1.
Fort Hood the first time, of course. And nobody did anything about it. They didn't say anything. His wife admits that back in April, he was at Disney doing pre-operational planning for a possible attack at Disney. Disney knew it because they told the FBI about him. For those who don't know, Disney has amazing surveillance and counter-surveillance operations. They told this guy in April. They told the FBI again in April, from what Disney's saying, that this guy was on property and acting strangely and needed to be checked out, and was able to provide an excessive amount of information on how to identify him.
Do we know if the federal government did anything with that?
Nothing yet so far. So you also have 6 days prior to the attack, he walks into a firearms dealer. Mm-hmm. He buys the 6 Hour. He buys another Glock. He already had a third weapon, which I was a little confused by that, but that's neither here nor there. And part of me thinks that he bought so close to the incident so he didn't get flagged, or by the time somebody realized the flag, it may have been too late.
Yeah, but he was not on the watch list at that time.
Right. Now, this is where I will say I am a firm believer that if you're in a watch list and your name gets run through the DROS system, which is what you get run through when you buy a federal fire, I'm almost 100% sure that your name ends up on a file somewhere for them to go, hey, this guy just bought a gun. Was he still, you know what I mean? I know we're not supposed to, but I can't imagine that, hey, they weren't supposed to be listening to our phone calls either.
Right.
Which is why when we talk about firearms registry, a lot of us conservatives who've never done anything wrong but are outspoken about our conservatism get worried.
Right.
Because lists like that may exist.
May exist.
Do exist.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
well, I mean, if you sell a rifle, why do you have to transfer it if they don't know who it belongs to?
Right. It's not because they're getting the 30%.
Right.
It's not a handling charge.
Right.
It's a tracking charge.
Yes.
So I believe, in my belief, just kind of looking at everything, he knew he had to buy close to the incident. However, that brings up the fact of training. I watch everybody hypothesize about how he brought as much ammunition, fired as many rounds, and was successful as possible. Hear me out, and I wrote the article about this the other day. I don't believe that this was his first time holding a rifle. I don't believe that it was his second time holding a rifle. You may be able to practice magazine changes in a mirror 24/7 and become amazingly efficient at it.
Yep.
However, once you get under battle stress, audio-visual exclusion from your adrenaline dump, you have to react with muscle memory. There's a reason why our operators, law enforcement, military, all when they train with their weapons, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times you build what's called muscle memory. Your body reacts essentially how it's trained to, which is why everybody trains how they work, or they're supposed to. So I do not believe that this was his first time. This wasn't a lucky shot. Plus, it was a semi-automatic weapon. The MCX is semi-automatic, one pull, one round. That's how it works. To be able to shoot 106 people, it wasn't just 106 rounds. So even if he had 30-round magazines, you're looking at 5-6 magazine changes because you know he had a miss. Plus, you can hear 25 shots that he fired at law enforcement at one point that hit nothing. So you're looking at a numerous amount of magazine changes. He was trained.
Yeah, I would agree he's trained. And, you know, on your point about muscle memory, you can build muscle memory doing dry fire techniques.
Right.
You can build muscle memory in front of a mirror to where that's even under combat stress, you're going to be able to function. But you're right. Was that the first time firing his rifle? I doubt it. I would be surprised. But even so, even just dry firing, he's going to be able to develop some of those skills.
Right, but not on the level
Now, he went to Saudi Arabia a couple
twice.
Times also.
He most certainly did. And in my article,
Weird. Who else went to Saudi Arabia? Huh.
Well, Hillary.
Important.
Hillary's been there.
Yeah, no.
Not in general. You're talking about which current terrorists that have acted recently showed up.
Anything.
Doesn't matter. In fact, that it's a quick drive to Syria and they don't really care. No, it's kind of strange.
Right.
The point I brought up in the article, too, was if he did train overseas, they don't historically train overseas with an AR platform rifle.
Correct.
I know everybody is saying it wasn't an AR-15, it's a SIG carbine. It's an AR platform rifle. The basis operation has kind of been there. The SIG Sauer MCX operates the exact same way as an AR platform rifle. It's not an AR-15 by its numeric designation, but it's not all that different. A couple different bells and whistles. That's about it. And as I keep telling everyone, it's a moot point because he could have walked in there with an Uzi and they're going to call it an AR-15. And I know we're trying to fight that stigma with the media, but let's hit them with facts.
They're going to call it an automatic weapon.
Right. Right. That was one of the things that came out. It was an automatic weapon. No, it's semi-automatic. An M4 can be an automatic weapon. That is not normally what you are sold in stores. You can get an M4 some places, but it can't be automatic.
Right.
It can't have the 3-round burst.
It can't be military grade.
Correct.
Which is interesting that I use that term.
Well, and let's talk military grade for a second.
Let's talk about it after the break.
Oh, come on!
No, because then it's my turn
no, I know. You bastard.
This was your segment.
I know. And somebody brought up the AK thing overseas, and I do want to talk about that before the end of the show.
Listen, folks,
we have a lot to get to.
We have a lot to get to. Just to give you a little, just a little peek, a little snippet, just a little taste of what's coming up. We are going to get into the military-style rifle argument. We are going to get into the gun debate. We are going to get into the political pushback and the political reactions that we've had on both sides of the aisle on this. And we're also going to dovetail all of this gun control talk into some of the terror attacks we've seen in France, because we think, obviously, that argument is very germane to what's happening here in our country today. But for right now, before we get into all that,
we're actually going to take a break. We'll cover everything we could possibly get to before the end of the show right here on the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Cap was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense Show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on shrmedia.com and highplainsdailynews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. Thank you so much for joining us. We're discussing everything that happened in Orlando, and I will bring up our next subject and turn it over to my good pal, Sackhead Clint. Go ahead, sir.
So, some of the political reaction right after this. Tweets came out immediately as this was going on, but I want to talk specifically about the initial tweets from Bernie Sanders, from Hillary Clinton, and from Donald Trump. You know, everybody said, hey, our thoughts are basically with the victims, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Trump came out and said our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and blah, blah, blah. He was the first one to mention thoughts and prayers.
Right.
And I was impressed with that. But then the president came out, and he gave a speech. And his speech wasn't incredibly horrible right after the event. It was not as good and inclusive as I think it could have been, but it wasn't completely horrible. He did, of course, mention the gun debate, but he refused, still refuses to refer to the terrorists as radical Islamic extremists, or to refer to radical Islam, or any of that. He refuses to identify our enemy. And another surprising thing from the president is he has yet to call the governor of Florida.
Right. Well,
this is the president of the United States.
Well, the president of the United States did call Florida. It was George W. Bush, the former president of the United States, actually called the Florida governor later that afternoon and said, "Our thoughts and prayers from Laura and I are with you and your entire state right now."
Yes.
So he did.
But the current president...
He called the mayor of Orlando, who I believe is a Democrat. But he did not call Governor Scott.
It's look, after 9/11, we came together as Americans.
Yes.
This is the worst terror attack. This is the first terror attack, or excuse me, the deadliest terror attack since 9/11.
Right.
The President of the United States... Look, Donald Trump came out and he went after the president on certain things. That's fine. It's a political season. I mean, that's not fine, but this is there are certainly legitimate political points to make. I don't think you make those legitimate political points right now, this close.
Sorry. I tried really hard to mute that. I'll do it again.
This close to an incident. And Obama came back, and he's really been divisive in his speech. And look, I'm not necessarily blaming the president for answering back, particularly when Donald Trump says or insinuates that the president had something to do with it or had knowledge or was complicit some way and or whatever he was referring to in his tweet earlier today. I don't think that that's helpful.
Right.
President Obama did not look. Regardless of what you think of the man's politics or what I think of the man's politics, do I think his policies have weakened our country? Yes, I do. Do I think that his politics have divided us as a nation? Yes, I absolutely do. Do I think the President of the United States wishes Americans to be dead at the hands of Islamic extremists or terrorism? No, I don't. Do I think that the President of the United States, do I think that President Obama wants Americans to be killed? No, I don't. I don't think the President wants any American to be killed regardless of political affiliation or how much he disagrees with somebody. I don't believe that of the man. I fundamentally disagree with him and what he stands for. Fundamentally. There is no question about that. But I don't believe that he wants Americans massacred or that he would do anything to knowingly create that situation. I don't. So I can understand the president kind of hitting Trump back a little bit. But we have seen such divisive rhetoric on both sides. A lot of it's coming from the left. And what I don't want to, what I'm going to strive to do right now, and I don't know if I'm going to succeed, what I'm striving to do right now is bringing attention to a very important component of why our country is in the process of collapse. And I want to do it without trying to sound like I'm pointing fingers. Although, and here's kind of the caveat to that, I'm going to point fingers over a couple things. But I want to know that I'm doing this with the intention of pointing out why our country is going to collapse. Unless we do something to fix it. And I don't know if we can. Look, after 9/11, right and left came together. We were all Americans. Mm-hmm. We were all fighting the war on terror. Yes, there were Democrats and Republicans. Yes, you're going to have a little bit of some political debate on things that come about, like the Patriot Act, like different things that come out. You're going to have a different view on how to do things, but generally, in this regard, the direction of the country, we kind of all know where we're headed in this regard.
Right.
After 9/11, everybody had American flags out on the porch.
Exactly.
Everybody had. We knew where we wanted to go as a country. We just may not have known specifically how we were going to get there.
Right.
And President Bush, whether you like how he did it or not, he was a leader. He formulated a plan, and he did what he thought was best to fix this country. And he did it through the Patriot Act. You can disagree with the Patriot Act. I disagree with a lot of the things of the Patriot Act. But he did something.
Well, and one of the things that he did do was get people to come together.
He did.
And I think that was the biggest accomplishment.
That's my point. We came together. Congress was together. We came together as a country. We're not seeing that right now.
At all.
We just had the deadliest terror attack since 9/11. We had our brothers and sisters in the LGBT community massacred in a nightclub. And we're getting nothing but vile rhetoric and behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Look, Trump's comments insinuating that Obama may have had knowledge, created this situation, whatever it is not right now at this stage in the game. President Obama coming back and talking about things he's saying regarding Trump, and the Democrats blaming the Republicans for this incident is not right either. The Republican Party didn't say, you know what, we're not going to vote on this piece of legislation because we hope more people die. That's absolutely not, and I don't even know that you can make a straight-faced case that that watch list information could have been used in this case to save lives. Because would this individual have gotten a weapon illegally?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Look, he unlawfully murdered 49 people. So, yeah, what's the big deal at that point about getting an unlawful weapon? It doesn't matter.
Well,
so, this, and then you have Paul Ryan, Speaker Ryan.
Can I touch on Obama real quick? Just because we made the comparison between Bush and Obama. And Bush's comments after 9/11, like I said, were very unifying. I have the clip of Obama if you want to hear it.
Yeah,
radical Islam over and over again. And just listen to
I
almost...
I wanted to get to that a little bit later.
Oh, I'll wait.
No, play it now.
Okay.
You already queued it up. Play it now. But yeah, I was going to come back to that because I know we had that clip. But yeah, go ahead and play it now since you brought it up.
To the phrase radical Islam, it's a political talking point. There's not been a moment in my 7.5 years as president where we have not been able to pursue a strategy because we didn't use the label radical Islam. If there's anyone out there who thinks we're confused about who our enemies are, that would come as a surprise to the thousands of terrorists who we've taken off the battlefield. That'd come as a surprise to those who've spent these last 7.5 years dismantling Al-Qaeda and the Fatah, for example, including the men and women in uniform who put their lives at risk. They know full well who the enemy is. So do the intelligence and law enforcement officers who spend countless hours disrupting plots and protecting all Americans, including politicians who tweet and appear on cable news shows. It's mostly just been partisan rhetoric. And sadly, we've all become accustomed to that kind of partisanship, even when it involves the fight against these extremist groups. And that kind of yapping has not prevented folks across government from doing their jobs.
So, first of all, yapping.
Well, he sounds like a petulant child.
He is. Look, so a couple things. And I touched on it a little bit, but I'll get to it now before we move on to the Paul Ryan thing. Look, yes, we do have to identify our enemy. Yes, Mr. President, if our enemy is violent Islamic extremists, we have to call them violent Islamic extremists.
Right.
In World War II, did we say the individuals from a country in Europe who is interning Jewish individuals and
they
trying
speak
to
the same
expand
language that they speak in Austria, but they're not Austrians.
Right.
They're the ones who live right next
we call
door.
them Nazis.
Right.
Guess what? When the Imperial Japanese Army was committing atrocities and when they bombed Pearl Harbor and when they engaged in atrocities throughout China and so forth, we called them the Imperial Japanese Army.
Right.
It was the nation of Japan. It was the Japanese. Right. And we declared war
We
against
didn't call
them
them a couple bad players with dive bombers.
No.
That's not what it was. And I think
we didn't call them a group of people slightly smaller in stature with almond shaped eyes, and they had red circles painted on their aircraft.
Right.
No, they were so yes, we do have to identify our enemies.
Right.
In the Cold War, who was our enemy? It was Russia.
Right.
And communism.
Right.
And guess what? We identified it as such.
Right.
So, yes, Mr. President, you identify that common enemy because what that does is that there leaves zero chance for misrepresentation or zero chance for mistaken identity, and it brings everybody together. There is a clear purpose, a clear mission, a clearly identified objective, and a common enemy that we can all come together as Americans to combat. It's very, very important psychologically, in my opinion, in order to identify that enemy.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Because enemy is so abstract. Look at, by failing to identify radical Islamic extremists as the enemy, that then leaves it open to interpretation. And that's where problems come in. Look, what if you have some wingnut that all they hear is Muslims are bad? And so now that's their perception. In my opinion, that can create division. If you don't have a clearly defined objective, a clearly defined enemy, and you leave it open to interpretation, bad things happen. Either through skewed point of view, skewed perspective, whatever, and it opens the door for potentially other things.
Right. Well, and the other thing, too, I think, is when you say radical Islam, you identify part of the motive. And that's part of the things that gets lost, is the motive behind this. As we've seen, it's gone to the gun argument right away.
And we're going to get to that in a minute.
Which is why I held back.
Thank you. Thank you, because I do want to get to Paul Ryan. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I know.
No, go ahead, please.
So,
your segment, my friend.
So look, Paul Ryan, and here's the point of division that we're at. And it sickens to me. And when I say I believe that this is going to bring about the final collapse of our nation, I completely mean it. Look, if we're being attacked in our homeland by a terrorist, and I don't like the term lone wolf either. You know what? It's not a lone wolf attack. There is a pack of lone wolves. There is a pack of wolves out there, and members of that pack are going to attack.
Right,
and
the term lone wolf, we've talked about this in the past, and we've used it in the past.
Yes.
Because that was the designation of that style of attack within the community.
Correct.
The law enforcement and military community.
Yes.
Which is the only reason why it was being used.
It doesn't, but I don't want the public to think that lone wolf, this is just an individual. No. There's a loose coalition.
Right. It was that specific attack, the style it was, the planning, when it's solely an individual. That is a lone wolf.
Right.
When you've traveled to Saudi Arabia twice, and you've obviously had some sort of other planning,
you're in a pack of wolves and you acted independently.
Right.
But the designation is still lone wolf attack. But look, Paul Ryan called for a moment of silence on the floor. Do you have the audio queued up for this?
Yes, I did.
So Paul, really, you have audio ready to go that we're not ready for, and you don't have audio ready to go that we're ready for?
Well,
come on, Sacco. So Paul Ryan asked for a moment of silence for the victims of Orlando. Now, I kind of want to set the stage here. As the moment of silence begins, he's Catholic, I believe, correct?
Yes.
Because he makes the sign of the cross as he bows his head to say a prayer, I'm guessing, based upon his actions. 3 members of Congress walk out. 3 members
Disgusting.
of Congress leave the room.
Disgusting.
And then I want you to hear the audio. Go ahead, Sean. Sorry.
The chair asks that the House now observe a moment of silence in memory of the victims of the terrorist attack in Orlando.
H.R. 5312, a bill to amend the High Performance Computing Act of 1991 to authorize activities for support of networking and information technology research and for other purposes.
Gentleman stating a parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman shall state his inquiry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I am really concerned that we have just today had a moment of silence, and later this week, the 17th.
Is the gentleman stating a parliamentary inquiry?
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I am particularly interested about 3 pieces of legislation that have been filed in response
The gentleman's not
to
sitting a
Charleston.
parliamentary inquiry. The gentleman is not sitting a parliamentary inquiry. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 5312, a bill to...
So he asked for a moment of silence. There's literally a moment of silence as 3 members of Congress walk out. And then the moment of silence is interrupted by the Democrats. Again, in the Democrats in the House yelling for them, where's the bill? Bringing this up to a gun debate and just causing this uproar in the middle of the United States House of Representatives during and immediately following a moment of silence for victims of a terror attack.
Exactly.
This is ridiculous. We can't even have a moment of silence together in this country for the victim. This is not about somebody's re-election campaign. This is not about somebody's particular political agenda. This is about how do we as a country come together to fight this threat.
Right.
What's the plan?
Right.
There is no plan right now. This administration's plan is to go back to the same old playbook, which is point the finger and talk about politics and bring up the gun debate. What's the plan on dealing with these terrorists overseas?
Right.
What's the plan with dealing with the terrorists now? Look, if the plan is, as a component of that, if you really want to bring the gun debate into this, and we'll talk about that next segment, or maybe we'll get into a little bit of it now. If you really want to have the gun debate, and it's framed in a way of, hey, based upon terrorism and the fact that we're in a fight, first of all, we're going to declare war on the Islamic State. We're going to declare war on radical Islamic extremists. We're going to declare war on Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Qaeda. Name the groups.
Right.
That's the first order of business. Make a formal declaration of war against the groups. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say you can't declare war on a group.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a specific flag-flying nation, which guess what? These people do have a flag.
Well, that's weird, and they also have land in Syria. They operate out of Raqqa.
So
they wear
declare
uniforms
war.
now.
Yeah, they do. Second of all, if you want to bring the gun debate in, hey, you know what? Let's have a discussion about if somebody's on the terror watch list, let's have a discussion and debate on whether they should be prohibited from owning firearms or not. Hey, I have my opinion on that issue. Sean has his opinion on that issue, and I can see both sides of that argument. My personal opinion on that is there a checks and balances? Is there a system in place to where somebody's Second Amendment constitutional rights is not being stripped without due process? That's my biggest argument against. Because if I'm considered right-wing, I'm considered a conservative, and somebody wants to put me or Sean or you on that watch list, and we're going to be prohibited from owning firearms, where's the due process in that? And I am being stripped of a constitutional right.
Right.
But let's have that discussion. Okay, so that's a concern for you? Well, let's talk about how we can do that. How can we ensure somebody's due process and then make sure that they don't get a weapon?
Right.
Hey, that's a discussion worth having. And I think that's a discussion that both sides could come and really find common ground on. I think that seems very reasonable.
Well, and let's say we don't find common ground. Let's say we don't for some reason.
But at least we engage in the discussion.
Exactly.
And we're going to the same place. We're not pointing fingers, nobody can own a gun because guns are bad. Because let's talk about gun ownership. France has some of the strictest gun control laws. It makes California look like the Wild West.
Well, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And fortunately for France, they have never had a terror attack.
They certainly haven't had 14 in the last decade.
And they certainly haven't involved firearms.
Absolutely not. They certainly didn't have a police officer killed yesterday without a firearm. However, he and his wife were murdered.
They weren't killed with firearms.
No, they were stabbed. However,
they could have defended themselves.
No, because up until
themselves.
yesterday, French police officers were not allowed to bring their personal weapons home because they have such tight gun laws.
Oh, but they can now.
The director of the gendarmes
Weird.
in French came out and said, "Hey, we're going to change that."
Is that Jean-Claude Van Damme?
The French police.
Oh, I thought you were talking to Jean-Claude
Not
Van
the
Damme.
muscles from Brussels.
So, and look, the guns, terrorists, you can have all the gun control bills you want. Terrorists are going to get the weapons.
Right. We know this.
If you outlaw weapons, there's going to be a huge black market for weapons. They're going to come across the border. You're going to have them. I know we only have 5 minutes left. We'll get into the gun debate after the break.
With Tami J.
She's
going to call in and say hi.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, we miss her.
Which is awesome. But look, there are legitimate political discussions that we can have regarding terrorism. Legitimate political discussions that we can have. There are differences, but we have the common goal of an identified enemy. See how this is all coming together?
Weird, right?
We have the common goal of defeating and defending our citizens against a common identified enemy, and we're moving together as Americans in solidarity with all communities in order to achieve that objective. There are going to be differences in how to do that. Robust debate is great. That's one of the things I love about this country. But we are so divided right now, and we've become so much more divided over the last 7.5 years. We are so divided right now that when tragedy strikes our country, it becomes more about the politicians and the political agendas and points of view than it does about the victims. These a-holes are arguing about political agendas and completely ignoring the victims. And they're pushing their agendas in the name of the victims without honoring them. And that, to me, makes me sick. Your word, Sean.
Well, listen, it's one of those things that we talked about what happened after 9/11. This is the second biggest terrorist attack since 9/11. As far as I'm concerned, this is the biggest terror attack, and the next one will be, and the one after that will be.
And what's weird is San Bernardino was before this.
Right.
We're averaging one every, 4 to 6 months now?
You see Merced?
Yeah.
Chattanooga.
I'm talking the bigger ones, though.
But right, we're starting to see them grow exponentially. Here's one of the things that's going to happen. In the Middle East, the countries that had strict gun control, these attacks still happen. They happen through bombs and explosives.
And firearms.
And firearms. But what I'm saying is and I use this argument all the time. If you hit the magic no guns button, and all of a sudden every gun, every firearm was erased off the planet tomorrow, that doesn't mean that the violence will stop. All that means is the death will be caused in other manners.
Yes.
Look at you, what was it, Vegas a couple months ago, the girl ran over and killed, 14 people because she was angry at a boyfriend and had mental health issues. Oklahoma City bombings. We see planes getting taken down. On and on and on. Go online and video heads chopped off.
No, don't do that.
But you know what I mean. You don't have to watch them and see how many pop up. The threat is always going to be there. I don't believe that a gun makes it easier. My argument, so I had an argument with somebody earlier today, and I said, would you rather they only use bombs? Then you can't fight back.
Right.
You're eliminated immediately. At least if it's a firearm, There's a possibility that if they aren't a great shot and you are, you have that potential. You have that potential to fight back. Oh, it's a hail of bullets. Well, you know what? I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. You going to ban buses? You have to be realistic. All you're doing is eliminating the type of weaponry the citizenry can use to protect themselves. And more importantly, you're standing on the graves once again of 49 people. You're standing on the injuries of the other 53. Like you did in Sandy Hook when you marched those children out there to push your agenda. These are all people who are protected with guns. They live in a bubble. They're telling you how to live outside of a bubble. Hillary Clinton hasn't driven a car in 20 friggin' years. You're going to listen to her tell you how to live outside of a bubble without a gun? She's had armed protection almost her whole adult life. She doesn't have to worry like you and I do. She walks into a facility to give a speech or anything of the sort. That place is swept with bomb dogs. There are people pat down, metal detectors, guys with guns everywhere, snipers teams, you name it. These people have no damn idea what it's like to live like you do. They don't have to walk down the street and potentially be robbed at gunpoint, a terrorist attack. The odds of it happening are slim. And you know how you know this is because look at the incident that just happened outside the Capitol where the guy tried to bring the gun in. What happened? The 50 guys with guns put him down, and rightfully so. They're protected. We are not. And we are not protected by them should they become tyrannical.
And that's kind of, I know we're up against a break right now, but that's kind of another entirely missed part of this whole argument. Folks, we don't have the right to keep and bear arms to protect ourselves from other citizens.
Right.
I mean, that certainly is a component of that. The right to keep and bear arms is really about maintaining a free state, meaning a free state of being. And really, it's the citizens' check on the government.
Right.
That is the reason we are supposed to be an armed population.
Right.
Is to keep the government in check. It's not to have an illegal armed insurrection.
Right.
But it's to ensure that the government does not become too oppressive over us, that we can't fight back.
Amen.
And during the American Revolution, guess what?
Better weaponry.
Armed citizens were armed with military-style weapons.
That's after the break.
That's after the
break. When we come back,
military-style weapons.
Military-style weapons and Tami J. All that here on the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless.
You guys there?
Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying cough, you stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here.
Hey, Tammy, you there?
11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reverb Common Sense Show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show live in the SHR Media Network. Joining us, and it's always a pleasure to have her, the amazing, the wonderful, the beautiful, the intelligent. She always gives me a list of how I have to introduce her, and it goes on and on. Tami Jackson. Tami J. Our
He's
dearest,
He's
one
lying.
That's not true. I've seen screenshots of the list that you put out for your introductions.
Yeah, right, and then I pay big bucks to make sure it's followed to the letter.
No, you just bat your eyes. It's ridiculous. Let's be real.
So I heard your whole rant, Clint, and you know, when you guys played the clip with Obama saying that it was political rhetoric, I was in the chat room all by myself there, and I yelled in capital letters, "Political rhetoric, my ass!"
And for Tami J to say "ass," it tells you what level it has gone.
Right.
Yeah, you know, this is like DEFCON 3 or something.
Yeah.
It's like, holy moly, she's bringing out the big language now.
Yeah.
But you only got up to 3 letters. I'll be really impressed when you get up to 4.
Yes. When you get to DEFCON 4.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, every once in a while, I'll say something on radio. One of the things I said, they made a commercial out of, and every time it plays, all my friends get hysterical because I got so mad at Nancy Pelosi. I said she needed to be hauled outside and have her ass whooped. Because that was pretty harsh for me. It's now a commercial that plays, you know, forever and ever and ever, and gives people no end of joy,
that's awesome.
which is fine.
And of course, Tami J is the editor-in-chief and writer for Barb Wire, as well as Saving Our Future, and she hosts the Tami J Show.
I do.
Which she's been doing for years now, and is one of our oldest friends. Tammy
not in terms of age.
I
I'm just going to apologize for Sean right now. He didn't mean that in terms of age. He meant in terms of length that we've known you and worked with you.
The length of friendship.
Right.
I don't even have gray hairs yet, although I'm not young like I used to be. But one thing I wanted to tell you guys, when you were going over your rant, which was magnificent, Clint, I loved
Thank
it,
you.
of course.
Thank you,
and
ma'am.
you guys know me. I'm a Second Amendment gal. I'm a shooter. I was trained in concealed carry advanced tactics by a Navy SEAL, so I actually can hit a target, and I can hit a target on the move, in fact. But it was very interesting. Years ago, you know how Move On was kind of real sneaky about getting people on lists, and so
Yes.
I somehow got on their email list. And I decided to stay on it because you know how it is. You want to reconnaissance, baby. And so I got this email blasted out just shortly after the president's horrific, heinous presser, and it was to, get money. It was a big blast money to ban the military, the weapons, whatever. And of course, then the guys in Congress moved on it later in the week. But it was very interesting. In the middle of it, it says military-grade assault weapons should not be used by civilians and have no place in our cities or towns, which, I could argue all day long about the Second Amendment, and these people don't understand that these are semi-auto. They're not select fire. And quite frankly, if we really went by the Second Amendment, it wouldn't matter what the weapon was, because they had some of them had better weapons in the private citizenry than the military back in the day.
Absolutely.
So, don't even go down that path. But then it says underneath that, Orlando, Sandy Hook, San Bernardino, Aurora. What do these horrific shootings have in common? The AR-15. Well, okay, we know they're wrong about Orlando now, because they put out that it was an AR-15 instead of the SIG. We now know it's a SIG. They look at the platform, and as Sean and I were talking about, and Sean said in his great article that they just see it and say, oh, it's an AR. Nobody goes any further. But underneath that, it says, this military-grade assault rifle was used to murder at least 50 people. Right now, such a mass-killing weapon is available for purchase online at trade shows and at neighborhood brokers across the nation. You guys notice how they put out this verbiage that makes it sound like I buy clothes from Garnet Hill. It's a cool online clothier that's, they're all over the nation, but they have really good quality stuff. And it's like you can go on, I bought some things through Gunbroker, but like you can go on a website, go on to Cabela's or something, and just say, yeah, send me my Glock 19 Gen 3, please, and I want it second-day air, please, and I don't want to have to sign for it. Like it's just going to come to your porch.
I wish.
That's how it should be.
Right, I wish that would happen.
But that's not how it is. And they
my Amazon account would be insane.
It's that easy.
Right.
And we all know that's not how it is, and especially not in California. I mean, Oregon is a blue state, but at least we're not insane yet with our gun laws.
Mm-hmm.
We still are.
You guys aren't far behind.
Yeah, we're not, and we've got some loons, and a lot of them are imports from California. But we've got some loons in our state house that are trying to infringe, to register guns, to do everything possible. But this whole thing, and they said we need to ban all assault weapons now and enact other common sense gun reform. And so, as we heard on the news, not only were most of mainstream media not saying Islamic terrorism, falling in lockstep with Obama, but they also were all saying assault rifle, even on the purported conservative network of Fox News.
Yep. Yeah. Even
they
Bill
were calling
O'Reilly.
it an assault weapon, an assault rifle. And every time I heard it, I got so mad. I had to go out of the room. I didn't want to throw something at my TV. I can't afford to replace that flat screen thingy. But so mad that people don't understand. And I am such a gun evangelist. Everywhere I go, I'm talking to people about the Second Amendment and guns, and especially women. And the misconceptions are just rife everywhere.
Yeah, and even Bill O'Reilly surprised me. Came out, and Gretchen Carlson too came out, and we're talking about these military-grade weaponry.
Yes.
That just shows such an ignorance for what really the right is in this country and where it came from. And you know what? That's exactly the kind of weapon we should have.
Right.
We should.
Right. And when we go down this road, and you brought up the term that they're using now is military-grade weapon. They're getting more away from assault rifle. I almost think like the slower news agencies are using assault rifle, if you will, as far as the poor weapon propaganda that's out there. Mm-hmm. They're going to military-grade weapon now to further demonize a citizen to have this. So they're calling it military-grade, essentially like, hey, you need to be in a special unit with special training to be able to possess this because it's designed for the military. And the original M16 was, in fact, designed for the military in Vietnam. They needed a transition to a lighter weapon that was more reliable, blah, 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 blah.
But the 223 wasn't even the round that they wanted.
No.
And
the AR-15 is a different weapon. It's not an M16 based on the fire rate alone. And we can go on and on as to the differences. That being said, when you earlier were talking about the terrorist watch list, and we've said this before, well, all you have to do is move the flagpole as to what's a terrorist, and now you can start disarming people with it.
Which is why I said let's have the debate and talk about at least maintaining the...
But when you get to the weapon side of it, they've now added military grade. Well, once that stigma sticks, all they have to do now is start applying that to different things they don't want us to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, well, that Gen 3 Glock you have, military uses sidearms, Tammy, so that's now a military-grade weapon.
You know what? Worse than that. Here's where I think they're going with the argument next. Military-grade, fill in the blank. The military uses ball ammunition.
Right.
That's like target ammo. For those of you that don't, which means the hollow points that you're using for home defense.
That's beyond.
That's
beyond military grade.
Oh,
that's only Federal Protective Agency grade. Right? You just keep moving the goalposts wherever the hell you want them.
But that's my point.
Right.
So military grade is crap. It's low bid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And by the way, you guys, you probably know that I also work for...
And ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on the Sackheads Radio Show. We apologize for the interruption. We apologize to our good friend Tami J. We have just about 9 minutes left. I'm going to try to get her back on the line. I apologize. Before
This break brought to you potentially by...
the U.S. government.
The U.S. government. Weird.
Anyone who listens to our show, and I know everyone's going to be like, oh, you're getting your tinfoil hat on. And
conspiracy theorists. Anytime we hit on a sensitive subject, like calling them out about potentially banning ammunition.
It's just the topic in general. We've been cut off other times, and longtime listeners of our show know when we get on a subject that's close to the vest, so to speak, that they aren't thrilled about, this has happened. Now, it could be completely ironical.
Right. Just several times throughout the past few years.
Through our career.
Right.
With different setups, different studios, and different computers.
And different internets.
But that's fine.
Interwebs.
It could all just be a possibly just, crap happens.
It could be. But that would be coincidental.
That would be totally coincidental. And just weird little things like trying to get Tammy back on via Skype. Normally, our Skype password is already kind of set up and ready to go, and now it's not there. And I have to reset everything. So I'm sure it's fine. Yeah,
I don't know what this means. Probably nothing. But there's 2 helicopters.
All right, that part might be an exaggeration.
Overhead right now. There's 2 helicopters flying.
In the world.
You're
right. They could be watching us from, say, Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Texas somewhere. So if you want to... this is just weird, dude.
We were talking about before we were so rudely interrupted. We were talking about the military, the term military grade,
right,
and how that can be used very easily to extend not just to weapon systems that the government deems to be military grade, but to anything.
Right.
You know what? That's military grade ammunition, which we already talked about. Ball ammunition is garbage. It's ball ammo. Anybody that shoots knows that's just it's ball ammo. It's target ammo. I mean, for the most part. I mean, yeah, maybe the military's ball ammo is loaded a little bit hotter than a regular target round or something like that. But it's ball ammo. It's crap. What about military grade food? Why do you need military grade MREs unless you're planning for the end of the world in FEMA camps? And so you don't need that. That's a military grade MRE. You don't need that. You don't need military grade flares or a military grade light source. What do you need a light that bright for? Or IR? Why do you need IR as a private citizen?
Why would you need MREs?
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Why would you need it? Why would you need IR? Why would you need an infrared light source if that's military grade? Why do you need a subdued patch on your hat?
Right.
That's military grade.
Why do you need a tactical vest?
Right. Why are you trying to hide? Why hunters, if you're really into hunting and sportsmanship, deer can't see that bright orange. And it's safer for you. Why do you need subdued patchwork and subdued clothing? Unless you're trying to hide something. Unless you're trying to be tactical. You're one of those militia folks.
Right. You're one of those weirdos.
Right.
I'm going to call Tami back. Let's see if we can get her back on the line here, and I apologize.
And some of that may sound a little absurd, but that's my concern with this whole new argument of military grade. Again, we're supposed to have military grade.
Right. Absolutely supposed to have it.
That's how we maintain our state of freedom. And I don't mean California, because we're not really free in California.
Where it's like, live free or probably not going to happen.
Right. Live free or live in California.
Right. That should be our state flag. Why not?
That's another Sackhead shirt idea.
Live free or California.
Live free or live in California. Right. With a California flag.
I just say live free or California.
Right.
I think that's all you need. You live free or California. Tami, back on the line. Do I have you? Tami? Tami, you there? Tami.
What did you do?
I don't know. It says she's here. But it's not letting me answer her. Tami.
If we can't get her back, will she call in next week?
I hope so, because this is frustrating. Give me one other thing. I'm just going to try to adjust a setting here, make sure everything's where it's supposed to be, which it was not. Tami, you there? Okay, we got you now.
Hi.
But next week we'll take you as well if you have the time. You know you're always welcome here. So yeah, that wasn't at all strange. Yeah, exactly. Hey, we know where the limits are of our free speech.
No, I want to hear about it. What was it?
If it has the Tami J seal of approval, I'm all for it. Wow, that's awesome. Oh, Lord. Well, we absolutely look forward to it. We only get about 30 seconds left in the entire show because of the meltdown that the computer had. Will you come back next week and spend more time with us, Tami?
Please.
Well, we would love to. We absolutely would love to. The amazing Tamara Jackson, Tami J, at Tami J on Twitter, editor of Barb Wire, Saving Our Future, and of course host of the Tami J Show. Thank you so much, Tami. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Folks, that's it for the Sackheads radio show here on the SHR Media Network. We're out of time.
You know what I feel like?
What?
I feel like we've built up to the point of climax.
Yes.
And then it just dribbled out.
I agree. I absolutely agree. We were stifled. Man, I just...
Great show. That was some of the best radio I've ever heard. Right up to the point where we got cut off.
Shut down.
You never diss the U.S. government.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you to all of our listeners who are engaged. Thank you to Tami Jackson. Follow us on Twitter at Sackheads, at Edge of Liberty, at Sackhead Clint. Find our Facebook pages, Sackheads Radio, Sackhead Sean. You can add us there. Make sure you go to shrmedia.com. There's a couple brand new articles up there. For Sackhead Clint, I am El Patriate Grande.
Yes, you are.
And you've been listening to the Sackheads Radio Show.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
Sack.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.